Hello, and thanks for joining us on Encore. Coming up on today's show, we have an all-star lineup. Brad Pitt and Marion Cotillard join forces in Allied, Tom Hanks makes a splash in Sully, and we take a trip down memory lane with the Fab Four.
Please help me, help me.
Sully.
Sully, where can we go?
Sully.
Sully!
Sully.
Well, for all of that, I'm joined by our film critic Lisa Nettleton. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, Olivia.
We're starting with a film that's out this week in France, Robert Zemeckis' new release, Allied. Now, on the poster, we can see Marion Cotillard and Brad Pitt dressed beautifully in evening wear, brandishing machine guns. What does that tell us?
It tells us that security was probably kind of lax in Casablanca in 1942, where Pitt is Max, a member of the Royal Canadian Air Force, posing as French resistant fighter Cotillard's husband, long enough to carry out a potentially deadly mission behind incredibly cosmopolitan enemy lines. And it suggests that there's something about firing machine guns at a stodgy event for Nazis and Vichy sympathizers that just can really make for a memorable evening. I'm being kind of flippant because I actually enjoyed this movie enormously, and I would like to point a machine gun at the people who put together the French radio ads for this movie, which give away way too much about what it's about and what the turning points in the script are. But let's take a hopefully more oblique and tantalizing look.
The guns will be taped under the champagne table. The ambassador arrives at precisely 8:30.
If he's late,
He's German. He'll be on time.
how come you don't know Stens?
I do know Stans. I didn't see you said the travel safety.
You'll be okay to use a Sten on the night, though.
I would be okay if I had to use cutlery.
Okay, so we have to be careful, no spoilers. But for those who don't know him, Robert Zemeckis directed Back to the Future, all the trilogy, Forrest Gump, Castaway, and even Who Framed Roger Rabbit. This is a wartime thriller, and they say that all is fair in love and war. So is this a fair attempt?
Well, judging by the reaction at the press screening I went to, I'm pretty sure our French colleagues are going to be kind of merciless with Brad Pitt over his French accent. But not having a seamless Parisian accent is really not a crime. And it is still pretty obvious that his cover would have been blown within a matter of syllables in this real situation. Now, just how much the movies affect our behavior is an open debate. But if it's true that they do affect us, I think people are going to be clamoring for an amusement park ride or theme park attraction where couples can have sex in a car in a sandstorm, because that's one of the rather juicy scenes in this film. This is a story about love and sex, but it is also a story about spies and spying. And spies in times of war, as we know, live on the proverbial razor's edge, where the fate of nations is at stake and death lurks around every corner. Trust, of course, is the main currency of human relationships. And if you're working undercover for your country and you're assigned to work with another operative, can you trust them? Spying during World War II, during the Cold War, involved then primitive electronic devices. One of the things I like about Oliver Snowden so much is that it shows us how all-encompassing this has become. Back then, it was intelligence intelligently applied.
A very old school spy thriller. Now we're moving to our next new release, Clint Eastwood's latest film, Sully. Now this is based on the true story of an emergency landing of a flight on the Hudson River. The pilot is played by Tom Hanks, the Sully of the title. This is every passenger's worst nightmare, a crash landing. So does the film tell us what went on?
What went on, parsed and revisited from many different angles, is precisely at the heart of this true tale. It's the major question. And the way it is explored is incredibly satisfying. It's really a no good turn goes unpunished sort of true tale, because for much of its crisp 95-minute running time, it's just an excellent choice for Clint Eastwood. It's about a guy who did something heroic and is then taken to task for having applied his skills. Because aviation field officials are peeved, and they think, based on computer simulations, that Sully could have handled the emergency a bit differently. And it's easy to take an interest in how this plays out because so many people have actually been on airplanes. And boarding an airplane, well, that's really an act of faith. It's an act of modern faith that the pilot is sober, the crew is fully qualified, the air traffic controllers are good at their jobs, the plane is sound, and the aircraft won't be struck by, say, birds, which is what happens to both engines in the plane in question shortly after takeoff from New York's LaGuardia Airport. Let's take a look.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Cactus 1549. Pitt birds. We've lost thrust on both engines. We are turning back towards LaGuardia.
Okay, what do you need to land?
No reload after 30 seconds. Engine master 1 and 2 confirm off.
Too low
Off.
terrain. Too low terrain. Too low terrain. Too low terrain.
This is the captain. Brace for impact.
So this was meant to be a routine passenger flight from New York to Charleston in January of 2009. Now, I actually remember what happened here. So the film's not playing on suspense, is it?
Well, I have to disagree. The film is brilliantly structured, perfectly cast, wonderfully played, and incredibly suspenseful. I'm not sure how they did it. It's a neat trick because it is a matter of public record that something that could have turned out with horrible loss of life and destruction actually turned out pretty well. I was lucky enough to see it at an IMAX theater with real rumbly sound, and if you have a chance to do that, I recommend it. It is a marvelous look at what, to coin a phrase, makes America great. What's that? It's a deeply rooted, almost pathological belief that it is important to do your job. And the rescue operations are thrilling because they're a tribute to human decisions, people deciding what to do, not machines. By the way, there is an interesting French component to the story. The plane was a French plane, an Airbus aircraft, and there's a key moment involving the headquarters of Airbus in Toulouse. And there is a coda that I get choked up about just thinking about. This is a wonderful movie. It's entertaining, and it is about something truly important, which is integrity in the face of daunting odds.
Okay, well, we're moving from real life now to the universe of Wallace and Gromit. And however realistic those little clay characters are, I believe they're not real. They're the creations of the Aardman Studios, of course. Now, there's news from this man and dog duo.
Yes, this is great news. Wallace and Gromit cartoons are absolutely suitable for ages 5 and up, but personally, I think they're really aimed at adults. Stop-motion animation makes it possible to create this believable universe that seems a lot like England, but is really located in the kingdom of pure cartoon imagination. Now, 2 of the medium-length shorts, this is the great news, have been remastered, and they're unbeatably clever and entertaining. 1993's The Wrong Trousers, in which an evil penguin named Feathers McGraw disturbs the household with one of Wallace's inventions, is absolutely terrific, but judge for yourself from this snippet.
Hang in there, Gromit. Everything's under control. I'll have that if you don't mind, eh? Huh?
That's obviously great, but writer-director Nick Park's A Grand Day Out, which he made in 1990, is even more glorious. I have to say, I was actually moved to emotional tears of joy the first time I saw this. There's an unlikely appliance, there's a trip to the moon. Why is there a trip to the moon? Well, in search of cheese for your crackers, of course. A Grand Day Out actually took 6 years to complete, and it was first telecast on Channel 4 on Christmas Eve in 1990. It was nominated for an Oscar. It didn't win, but I guess that's okay because the winner was another animated short by the same guy who did, and that was Creature Comforts. Now, also on the bill is Morph, one of Aardman's earliest clay creations. I happen to have this effigy of Morph here, which I use to hold up my guidebooks to maturity and adult living. And in a world sorely in need of good news, despite the fallout from the Brexit referendum, it has just been announced that they are indeed going to make a sequel to the Shaun the Sheep movie called Shaun the Sheep Movie 2. French money is going to help make that possible. So where there's a will, there's a way.
Much loved characters there from the Aardman Studios. Now we're finishing with a DVD release here in France, which focuses on another successful British export, that is the Beatles.
Indeed, Ron Howard's documentary 8 Days a Week. Now, here in France, we didn't get 8 days to see it. It was only shown once on a Thursday evening and then tipped over exclusively into VOD, but now you can own it on DVD. I'm not completely sure I understand why they decided not to keep it in theaters, because boy, oh boy, is this terrific on the big screen. And Ron Howard, who is as gifted a storyteller, as a filmmaker, as our other two directors today, Clint Eastwood and Bob Zemeckis, assembled footage to show us what it was like when the Beatles came to America for the first time. It wasn't that long after President Kennedy's assassination, and they had a unifying power that absolutely swept away everything in its path. It's not hyperbole to call it a watershed moment. The Beatles were themselves. They were cheeky, irreverent, talented young men who worked beautifully together, played beautifully together. The world has never seen anything like it. Now, our older viewers will just automatically understand why this is a big deal, but for our younger viewers, here's a book I recommend, which is stories about when they came to America. And something remarkable about 8 Days a Week is that with modern remastering techniques, the music actually sounds better than it did back then. Now, I have never met a Beatle, but I've met two people who did meet them. So if you accost me on the street, you'll be 3 degrees of separation from the Beatles. And speaking of math, when I was in 8th grade in 1969, we had a journalism assignment to do a story that involved percentages. So to make it easy on myself, I asked exactly 100 classmates whether they thought Paul was dead. Only one guy said yes, so I was able to do the headline, 99% of Rogers School students believe Paul is alive. And with looking back, that means that at age 13, 14, I was a better pollster than a lot of the people who are working for these outfits today, because Paul's still alive, right?
I think we can confirm that. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us this week. We'll leave you with the inimitable voices of John, Paul, George and Ringo. Remember to check out our website, and you can keep up with Encore on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.
Hello, my name's Paul McCartney. This is Ringo Starr. This is John Lennon. I'm George Harrison.
The Beatles. In one meteoric year, they've led the way from the cellars of Liverpool to the national limelight.
What about the reports that you guys are nothing but a bunch of British Elvis Presley?
It's not true. It's not true.
I need somebody help, not just anybody.
There's no switching off. You're on 24 hours a day.
I always like singing Help because I meant it. It's real.